So this map, that was a present from my group when I had my inaugural lecture as a professor. So they wanted to make a nice artsy piece that I could actually put on the wall and demonstrate my maps. And what they did is that they took every region of the world and treated it with another one of our algorithms. So this is an all-in-one representation of all kinds of cool algorithms we had been developing over the years. I'm Bettina Speckmann. I'm a professor for applied geometric algorithms at TU Eindhoven. So what I do is called geometric algorithms or computational geometry. And that means I like working with data that have location, that have a place in the world. Points, lines, also higher dimensional shapes. The application areas where this comes from is often geographic information systems. So things have to do with maps and with route planning and with cars and animals being places and us wanting to understand where everything is. But also from robotics and from graphics, basically anywhere where your data location matters. So I usually tell people, well, I like my data with location, and it's extra fun if that location moves. So of course there are many things that move that are actually basically a moving point. And you can track boats and people and birds and pretty much anything where you can put a receiver on, you can track and then interpret it as a moving point. But there are much bigger things that move that cannot be represented as a moving point. For example, whole river systems. So we're working together with some great geomorphologists in Utrecht University, and they're interested in the movement of braided rivers. These are big rivers that have multiple channels and sandbanks in between. So another example that's not a braided river but behaves like one in certain aspects is the Western Scheldt, for example. There are many arms and sandbanks in between. And this is actually a very active system. So the water transport, the material, so I always just say sand, it moves the sand and makes sandbanks here and erodes them there. And this is of high importance for everybody that lives around these big rivers. So if it's not deep enough, then boats cannot navigate. But if in other places there's not enough sand, then our dikes will break and everybody drowns. So sand's important, and we have been working on geometric and topological methods to extract the network of these rivers automatically from measurements. The thing I first started out with is really geographic information systems, in particular automated cartography, so making maps with computers. In particular thematic maps, so maps that don't just show you how to get from A to B, but that show you something like about the production of cars over here, or the number of schools over there, or the earthquake magnitude here, or the flow of people and goods from one place to the other. So if you open your school atlas, which I'm sure you have still somewhere, then there will actually be tons of thematic maps in there that explain you all kinds of things. So many of these maps, especially the good ones, are still made by hand. Well, computer assisted, of course, right? Nobody's actually drawing them anymore, but there's actually a cartographer with lots of knowledge that places the particular items on the map in the best places. And if you look at really good maps, it's enormous amounts of information that's encoded in there. So if you look at what cartographers used to be able to do, the ones who are doing this by hand, how much data density they could get into there, but they could still communicate to people the actual data behind that. I just find that fascinating. All right, so this is the thing that I sometimes explain, and then my husband actually made me an actual version of it. So this is a little example that's supposed to explain why geometry is easy for people, sometimes, and hard for computers, always. So this is supposed to be a bunch of points. Now these points became nails. Now I want to construct the smallest shape that encloses all of this. Well, and so if you have a rubber band, and then you just kind of snap the rubber band from the outside, this is the shape. Right, so this is called a convex hull. So if I give you a new board with nails, well, you also want a rubber band, but then I'm just going to give you the points and a pen and say, okay, now draw me this shape. You will have no problems, right? You can draw this endlessly. It will be boring at some point, but you can just do it. Now, how do I explain to a computer what shape the computer is supposed to compute? Because all the computer gets is the coordinates of these points. So when you intuitively understood what I wanted, you understand something about the geometry of the shape. And it's not explicit, right? You just kind of do it and then you know it. So if I want to teach a computer how to do this, then I need to make it explicit. So I have to kind of think about what is it I'm actually doing when I'm computing such a shape. So if you look at this, then you can actually draw lines through any two of these points. And the edges that are on the convex hull is exactly those things where all points are on one side. So you want to find those lines such that all points are on one side. Now see, that is something a computer can compute and then stitch together. I really like this thing where, okay, I want to solve this problem, and I'm going to start solving the problem. And while I'm trying to solve this problem, I'm trying to figure out what is it I'm doing? Like how did you get there? I once had this with a drawing for every point that I just knew exactly what to do, but it took me like 2 days to figure out what it actually was I was doing and how I was making my decisions. Well, once I had that, though, I could write the algorithm and publish the paper. But yeah, so this is really fun.